Psalm 83, a plea for God's justice against a conspiracy of nations. Psalm 83, attributed to Asaph, is a passionate and urgent prayer in the form of a song. It is classified as an imprecatory psalm, a type of writing in which the psalmist calls on God to act decisively against enemies. In this particular psalm, the focus is not on personal enemies but on nations that have united with the intent of destroying Israel. The psalmist calls on God to intervene, not only for the preservation of Israel, but also for the greater purpose of vindicating his name and authority over the earth. The psalm opens with a direct plea to God: "Do not keep silent, O God. Do not hold your peace, and do not be still, O God." This triple appeal emphasizes the urgency of the situation and the psalmist's desperation. The threat is described in stark terms: the enemies of God are making a tumult, conspiring against his people with the express purpose of eradicating them. Their goal is clear: to cut them off from being a nation, so that the name of Israel may be remembered no more. This is not merely a political or military threat, it is an existential one, aimed at wiping out the identity and legacy of God's covenant people. Because of this, the enemies of Israel are also depicted as enemies of God himself. The psalm then moves into a detailed listing of the enemy coalition, naming 10 groups and regions including Edom, Moab, Ammon, Amalek, Philistia, Tyre, and Assyria. These were historic enemies of Israel, and by listing them, the psalmist underscores the overwhelming nature of the threat. It is not one enemy, but many, united in a confederacy with one consent against God's people. This represents a rare and ominous alliance, where old rivalries are set aside in favor of a common cause, the destruction of Israel. Importantly, the psalmist views this not simply as an attack on Israel, but as a direct affront to God. The conflict is thus elevated to a spiritual level. Recalling past acts of divine deliverance, the psalmist pleads with God to treat these modern enemies as he did those in the days of the judges. References to the defeat of Midian, Sisera, Jabin, Oreb, Zeb, Zebah, and Zalmunna evoke dramatic stories of victory in which God intervened decisively to save his people. These examples are not random, they are chosen for their symbolism, times when Israel seemed overwhelmed and yet was miraculously delivered. The message is clear: just as God defeated mighty armies before, he can and should do so again. The repetition of historical victories serves both to bolster faith and to remind God of his covenantal role as Israel's defender. The psalm continues with vivid poetic imagery. The psalmist asks God to make the enemies like whirling dust and chaff before the wind, images of insignificance and impermanence. He likens divine judgment to a consuming fire, requesting that God pursue and terrify the enemy with his tempest and storm. This language reflects the deep emotional intensity of the prayer, as well as the psalmist's belief in God's power to act dramatically in defense of his people. However, amidst the call for destruction, there is a striking and unexpected request: fill their faces with shame, that they may seek your name, O Lord. This verse introduces a note of redemptive hope. While the psalmist wants the enemies defeated, there is also a desire that their humiliation might lead them to acknowledge the one true God. This suggests that judgment and mercy are not mutually exclusive. Even in the midst of anger and fear, the psalmist holds space for the possibility of repentance and conversion. The psalm concludes with an affirmation: that they may know that you, whose name alone is the Lord, are the Most High over all the earth. This is the ultimate purpose of the psalm, not just military victory or national survival, but the universal recognition of God's sovereignty. The plea for deliverance is tied to a greater vision: that the nations would come to know and fear the God of Israel as the supreme ruler over all creation. Psalm 83, then, is more than a nationalistic cry for help, it is an expression of trust in God's justice and power. It reflects the fears and threats faced by Israel in the ancient world, but it also articulates a hope that God's intervention will lead not only to Israel's preservation but to the global acknowledgement of his rule. It is a reminder that in times of crisis, prayer can be both honest about danger and grounded in a vision of divine purpose.
Psalm 83, a song, a psalm of Asaph. Do not keep silent, O God. Do not hold your peace, and do not be still, O God. For behold, your enemies make a tumult, and those who hate you have lifted up their head. They have taken crafty counsel against your people, and consulted together against your sheltered ones. They have said, Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be remembered no more. For they have consulted together with one consent. They form a confederacy against you, the tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagrites, Gebal, Ammon, and Amalek, Philistia with the inhabitants of Tyre. Assyria also is joined with them. They have helped the children of Lot, Selah. Deal with them as with Midian, as with Sisera, as with Jabin at the brook of Kishon, who perished at Endor, who became as refuse on the earth. Make their nobles like Oreb and like Zeheb, yes, all their princes like Zebah and Zalmunna, who said, Let us take for ourselves the pastures of God for a possession. O my God, make them like the whirling dust, like the chaff before the wind. As the fire burns the woods, and as the flame sets the mountains on fire, so pursue them with your tempest, and frighten them with your storm. Fill their faces with shame, that they may seek your name, O Lord. Let them be confounded and dismayed forever. Yes, let them be put to shame and perish, that they may know that you, whose name alone is the Lord, are the most high over all the earth.